Language revitalization. Now, the concept of language revitalization is intrinsically related to language shift. That is, once there has been a language shift or there has been a language death, then efforts are made to revitalize or to enliven that language. So, for language revitalization to take place, there is a certain kind of a grading scale that is used to identify the language shift. This graded intergenerational disruption scale, presented by Fishman, 1991, outlines 8 stages of disruption across generations. And the higher the score or the stage is, the more language shift has taken place. So the stage 8 says that if only the people who speak a language are old people who live in an isolated, more or less isolated stage, then that means that it is at the grade or the stage 8 of language shift. Stage 7 is when it is spoken by people who are socially integrated, but then even these are people who are beyond child rearing age. That is, the language that speak is then not being used with their own children, and they are not bringing up children. So these are older adults. Stage 4 would mean that language is now being used in the lower levels of education, but not in the higher levels. Stage 3 would mean that it is used in lower levels of workplace also, and it is also used across communities, but it is not used at a higher level. Stage 2 again highlights the significance of government using a language, and if a language is being used by government and by media, then it is at the level of stage 2 of a language shift. Stage 1 would mean that this language is actually used for the higher functioning of the government. It is used in education and it is also used in social sphere. So we can see that at stage 1, the language is very much there. There is no need for language revitalization. And at stage 4, the language is actually threatened for death until and unless there are some steps taken for its revitalization. So we said earlier, the higher the score is, the more the threat is. This is how the scale has been designed. Now, the concept of the reversal of language has been challenged, and it is argued that when a language shift has taken place or language death has taken place, what happens is not just language reversal, but language revitalization. Now, this means that when we are reviving a new language, for instance, think of Punjabi, we think of like revitalizing it, then we don't want to actually use exactly the same functions for which the language is used, but we add on new functions. Then we are adding on to Punjabi, for instance, if there has been a language shift, we are adding on new vocabulary related to technology. So we are not just reviving it, we are revitalizing it, bringing something new to the language and modifying it a little so that we can use it in our own given context in the current situation. So this is a move towards a newer use of language rather than just reviving it for what it was used before. Over here, we need to keep in mind that to revitalize a language or to stop the language from language shift or language death, the mother's tongue or the use of home language is extremely important. If the parents stop to use that language with their children, then there is no transmission of language. And if there is no transmission of language, it will eventually die until and unless some steps are taken to revitalize that language.